Hey guys, I'm Donnie Kiefer, head football coach at West Ashley High School in Charleston, South Carolina. Just wanted to do a little video this morning on defense, just some general basic guidelines, that kind of thing. I get a lot of questions from a lot of coaches, about, what do you guys do? How do you do it? What do you base it on? All that kind of thing. So I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, any defense can be sound if you understand it, if your players understand it, if you can teach it well, if you know all the ins and outs of it. So there is no best defense necessarily. There's no 4-3, the 4-4-2, 4-4, 3-2, 3-3, whatever. Any defense can be sound if you know what you're doing. So first of all, there is no base template that is the best defense out there. If there was, everybody would be running it. If there was one defense that was superior to everything else, then every NFL team would use it, every collegiate team would use it, every high school and sub high school team would be in that defense. So there's not, it's not about the scheme, as we'll talk about as we go through this. So the big thing is understand that there is no magic bullet. It's all about certain considerations. Okay, couple of things that you have to consider when you're talking about defense and installing your defense. Number one is personnel. Do you have the personnel to do the things that are required of a particular defensive scheme? Do you have the players that can do those things? Okay. Secondly, is research. You have to research whatever it is that you want to do. I don't care if you've been doing it for years. You should stay abreast of everything that's going on, all the nuances, all the different adjustments, all the new things that are coming along. And let me preface that by saying, not everything that's new is good. Okay, not everything that's new is time tested and good. There's a lot of things out there that some people might see as old school. Okay, hey, there's a lot of good stuff about old school, and a lot of old school stuff still works. But I think that as an effective, if you're going to be an effective defensive coach, you also have to be cutting edge, and you have to be aware. I mean, offenses are evolving. I do both sides of the ball. I'm equal opportunity. I love offense. I love defense. I feel like I can coach any position on the field and do it with a high level of expertise. And so it's not like like I'm just a defensive guy. I look at everything that I do from both sides of the ball. I understand how much offenses have evolved, even over the last 10 years, 5 years, definitely over my career, which my first head coaching job was in 1986. So that tells you, I've been around a long time and see a lot of things come and go. So, you have to be able to be cutting edge. You have to be able to be advanced and understand how people are trying to attack you if you're going to be an effective defensive coach. So, one thing that you can do that will help you, and when I say research, that doesn't mean that you're going to go and try to find out the basics of a particular scheme necessarily if you're already familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, then yes, you have to start at the very basics. But let me say this, it's much more important to go and meet with people in person, whether it be other high school coaches, whether it be college coaches, whatever it is, people who use that scheme, who have experience in that scheme, who have been successful in that particular scheme that you're wanting to run, and talk to them about details. Details. When you just go to a clinic, you're not going to get everything you need to know. Okay, you're going to get some clinic talk and you're going to get some real talk, but you're not going to get every little in and out. I mean, people, all football coaches are pretty much willing to share, but by the same token, if they have a few little nuggets that they feel like set them apart with what they're doing defensively, they're not necessarily willing to go to a clinic and tell all about their stuff. You know, I'm in South Carolina. My whole career just about was in North Carolina. So let me say this: if North Carolina and NC State are speaking at the same clinic, which that happens a lot, why would North Carolina's defensive coaches give NC State's um, offensive coaches all their little tidbits, all their little adjustments, all their little nuances of their defense. They won't. But if you go see the University of North Carolina defensive staff in person and sit down with them, go to their film room, go through film with them, get on the board with them, they're way more likely to tell you the absolute deep truth about everything that they're doing. And I don't blame them. And same thing, vice versa from the other side. If I was NC State, I wouldn't be telling North Carolina everything I'm doing on offense and every little nuance either. So that's important that you get in there and that you meet with people that have done it and that are going to be honest with you and meet with them one on one. That way you can ask relevant questions, not general questions. And sometimes, as you know, in a clinic, you can't ask questions at all. It's a prepared presentation, and the coach that's giving the presentation is, he's on a timeline. He's trying to get everything in and trying to give you some good basic information. That doesn't mean that you're going to get all the details. So that's important. Um, Another thing that you need to think about when you're considering, what defense should I be in, what fits us, is that you have to prioritize fundamentals. Okay, all right. That I'm not telling you anything you don't know. If you're a football coach, you know that fundamentals are the most important part, way more important than scheme. However, you've got to take it a step further and a step deeper. It's not just that you have to prioritize fundamentals. Yes, that's important, but you have to prioritize fundamentals which are specific for the defense that you're trying to run. For instance, if you're an odd front and you're basing your odd front on slant, pinch, different types of movement from a head up position, okay, those techniques are a lot different than, let's say, if you're in a 4-3 and you're in a 4-3 and you're shading and you got a 1 technique, you got a 3 technique, you got 2-5 techniques or a 9 technique to a tight end. So all of those fundamentals are inherently different than slanting, pinching, and angling in an odd front. So you need to make sure that you understand those fundamentals specific to what it is that you're wanting to teach. One of the worst things that you can do, and one of the biggest time wasters that you can present your staff and your players with, is a bunch of fundamentals and a bunch of drills that have absolutely no correlation and no carryover to what you're doing on the field within your scheme. So that's very important that you get that right. Okay. Another example, if you're a cover 2 team where you're gonna shuffle, let's say you can use a shuffle technique with your corners so that they're sitting outside in looking through the receiver to the quarterback to flow, that kind of thing, and you're in a shuffle technique and that's what you believe in. But you go out and every day you have your cornerbacks doing backpedal drills if you're not using any coverages that require backpedal. Okay, say you're cover 3 and your guys are thirds players and you're backpedaling, but you're doing drills that are shuffle techniques, that kind of thing. Now, if you're multiple, if you're like up front, if you're some head up, slant pinch, angle, and you're some shade playing technique, then you have to teach both. It's just that simple, and you have to make sure that you allow enough time in your practice schedule that you can teach both, but don't teach something that you're not actually using. That's a waste of time. If you're a multiple coverage guy, if you're going to play some man techniques, some cover 3, 1 high techniques, if you're going to play some cover 2 or quarters techniques, where your cornerbacks are going to have to both backpedal and press and run and shuffle technique, then you have to make sure that you set aside enough time to do all of that. So that's very vital that you actually use your time wisely and prioritize the fundamentals that you'll be using within that scheme. Okay. The next thing is, I think the biggest thing when it comes to sound defense is that you have to create 2 things. Number one, you have to create numbers. You have to have a numbers advantage in both the passing game, in your coverage, okay, in your rush lanes. You have to create a numbers game and a leverage game. Okay, you have to make sure you always have outside contain, make sure that you're leveraging whichever gap responsibilities the players maintain, all of that. That's very important. So if you can get 3/2 in the passing game, you're sound, unless you're playing man or some kind of just 2 read or quarters where you're reading 2-1. That's fine. Sometimes depending on what your philosophy is, you may not want numbers, okay, or you may not feel like you require numbers. You feel like, okay, if I got two DBs for two wide receivers, we can read that and switch it off and pattern read and do whatever we need to do, and we're fine. If you want to get a numbers advantage, then you figure out and become creative and figure out a way to get three over their two, or to get four over their three, and still be sound, away from the trips, away from the twins, whatever it is, away from quads. Even, you still have to have numbers and leverage to be sound both to it and away from it. So that's something you have to really get detailed about. Okay. One of the things that I like to do and have always done is worst case scenarios. Okay. I spend a lot of time year round, 365 days a year, drawing stuff up, both offensively and defensively. Like I said, I'm both sides of the ball. Okay, I've I've coached in two national all-star games and ran the offense. I've coached in the Shrine Bowl and the North Carolina East-West game and was the defensive coordinator. So I love both sides of the ball. So I'm drawing X and O in all the time. And a lot of people will ask me, they say, well, why do you draw the same stuff up or similar stuff up over and over again, um, year round? Well, here's the thing. Number one, I'm trying to present myself and my thinking with every worst case scenario that I can come up with. You know, how often have you pulled up a video on YouTube? You know, how to defend so and so with the 4-3, with the 3-4, with the 3-3, and then everything they draw up is like 21 personnel in the I formation. Now, there's nothing wrong with 21 personnel or the I formation, but it's a lot easier to line up to that stuff than it is, say, trips and quads with motion and different things like that. So a lot of that base stuff that you will see on videos or that you'll see on YouTube, or if you go to a clinic and they're drawing it up, best case scenario, okay, then you walk away thinking, wow, man, that defense is awesome. That's killer. That you shut down everything they do. Then you get all these different motions, formations, adjustments, shifts, and all that, and you're like, oh crap, now what? Okay, so you got to give yourself, and you've got to think about, you've got to practice defending and adjusting to worst case scenarios and everything in between. Yeah, draw it up two tight end, full house, boom. You got every gap filled and you got overhang players and everything. Everything's good. And you need that. You have to do that. You have to be sound in that. But you also have to also give yourself everything that could happen, feasibly happen badly. And by the time you get in the game, you should not have to worry about what your adjustments will be, because you've already mentally prepared for them. Not only yourself, not only your coaching staff, but your players as well. Okay, it's called anticipation. Okay, I will admit that I am bad and always have been bad about one thing, and that's I will prepare for hypotheticals. Even if I haven't seen you do something, knowing offense like I do, and being able to look at that and go, wow, if I was in that, I would really look at doing this to that particular defense. I would attack it like this. Okay. And it could be anything. It could be a team you've not seen run any speed option, but depending on how you're aligning, if you're not sound, if you're not careful, speed option to the weak side or whatever could be a good choice for them. Could be something that would hurt you. So you have to have answers to all that, and I have never apologized for being anticipatory, for anticipating what might happen, for preparing for what could hypothetically happen. Now, I'm not going to spend the bulk of my practice time on that. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes a week working on something that I've never even seen. But we're gonna think about it. We're gonna talk about it. This past year was a good example. We're playing a team that's a triple option team out of the gun, and that's all we had seen them do at all. But watching film from past years, they were all under center. They were under center triple, which is a lot different. You guys know that. You defensive guys know that. So we made sure that we had a 10-minute period every day preparing for under center triple option and everything that they could do. I understand that offense. I've run that offense, the flex bone. I know, what they're looking for, what they're trying to do, how they're going to block it, and then based off the film that I had from them, from previous seasons, we had a game plan for under center triple, even though we had not seen it. Everything we had seen on film, and this was later in the season, everything we had seen on film was gun triple and some power and ISO and stuff like that. So sure enough, man, first series, bang, they come out flex bone under center, ran the flex bone almost the entire game. We knew, just had that gut feeling. We knew what we were doing. We knew how to line up to it. We knew how to read it. We knew how to, to cancel, cancel gaps. We knew who had quarterback, who had pitch, who had dive. Everybody was sound. So it did not affect us. Okay. So we were able to do that. Again, that was just anticipation of what they could do, even though we hadn't seen it. And, we ended up winning the game, I think 21-14, something like that. It was a good, tough, hard fought game. They were a good football team. But because we didn't get into that stuck in the, oh, I'm only going to prepare for what I see. If they do something later, we'll adjust as we go. Baloney. When you wait, when you wait until you actually see it, then it's a little bit too late. You better have your adjustments in your bag of goodies that you can pull out and know what you're going to do. And again, anticipate what could happen, not just what you've seen. So, that's a big thing. Um, Another thing you need to do, and I've been a head coach for, gosh, I don't know, 34, 35 years now. I don't know. I've won 260 games throughout my career. So one of the things that you have to do is uh, you have to be able to present complexity and multiplicity within your defense. You have to present to the offense that you're very multiple, very complex, and all that. And I believe in multiplicity. I want to be multiple. I want to be able to get in some even fronts, some odd fronts, some one high coverages, some two high coverages, some man coverages. We're going to do all of that. But I want it to look very, very complicated to the offensive people, while at the same time, to us, it is very simple. So we can seamlessly move from one look to another without even changing personnel. So that's huge. Now that takes some work on the part of your staff and yourself to make sure that like your will linebacker, for instance. If you're a, let's say you're a 3-3 stack and you want to go to a 4-2 look, then you might have to walk that will down on the line of scrimmage to play a 5 technique and bump that head up end down to a 3 technique or a head up or whatever you're going to do with him, slant and pinching. But people are going to have the capability and the ability to align in different configurations and different looks and all of that, and still be able to carry out everything that they need to do within that scheme. And then they might have to stand up, and now they got to drop hook to curl because now the will is in a stack position in a 3-3. So that takes some work, and it takes some planning, and it takes some organization to be able to get guys to do that. But believe me, you can do it. I think one of the biggest things that affect coaches in a negative way is that I think our kids, I think our players are a whole lot smarter than we give them credit for. I think they're capable of a lot more adjustments and a lot more things put on their plate than we think they are. I think coaches sometimes limit players. I think, a lot of times we're the ones saying, oh, my guys can't do all that. I got to keep it super simple. Well, if you work great fundamentals, it is going to be simple. And that's part of the great thing about being multiple in a simplistic way is that if you teach great fundamentals, I mean, a defensive lineman, he doesn't care if he's lined up on a guard or a center or a tackle. It doesn't matter. Technique's the same. If you teach a linebacker to read cloudy clear and to plug or scrape, depending on what he's got happening in front of him, it doesn't matter if he's reading A gap cloudy clear, B gap cloudy clear, or C gap cloudy clear. All the basic fundamentals are the same. So, that's just one of those things where you have to spend the time doing it. Luckily, most of us, in a normal year, not a COVID year, most of us have the capability to be able to have spring practice or skill development like we had in North Carolina, spring practice here in South Carolina, and we have summer. So that's what you do with your summer. You make sure that everybody is understanding all the fundamentals of all these different things. Don't make it about just big picture all the time. Make it about the fundamentals, the specific fundamentals, and then you will become a better team, in my opinion. Uh, Another thing that you have to do if you want to be really good on defense and be stellar, be able to shut people down. Now, let me go back for a second. Okay, like I said, I've been coaching for a long time. Some defenses that I've coached have had, 8 or 9 war daddies on that side of the ball, right? So it really wouldn't have mattered what we did. We're going to shut people down because we had guys with nasty attitudes that were great athletes that could go and get things done. Other years, we've not had those. We might have had one more daddy and 10 average guys. We might have had 11 above average guys, that kind of thing. So not every year are you going to have that absolutely shut down defense because of the personnel you have. But if you teach great fundamentals, you can always be competitive. You know, there might be some disappointments along the way because you don't have those guys that are really tenacious and aggressive, but you can teach that. And that was going to be my next point. So, one of the things that you really do is make sure that you teach and reinforce and really just emphasize just relentless aggressiveness, physicality, pursuits, just a nastiness attitude on defense. Now, I'm not saying play dirty. I'm saying play clean. We always want to play clean. We don't tolerate crap in our program. We're not going to have people playing dirty and being cheap shots and late hits and talking trash. I hate trash talking. To me that's worthless. I don't want to hear that. So we don't promote or tolerate anything like that. But what we do emphasize and reinforce and reward is just relentlessness. I don't care what your scheme is. If you can get your guys running to the football and you can get them recognizing offenses the moment they come out and they're ready to play and not think, and that they will be great tacklers and that they will come and they will be fearless. And here's the other thing, you have to teach them to take it personally. If the other team gets a first down, if the other team scores a touchdown, that needs to be taken personally by your defense. And if it's not, if it's no big deal, oh, they scored, let's stop them next time. If it's not a big deal, if your defensive guys can't get a little bit ticked off because somebody went down and scored on them, then you're not teaching them relentlessness. Okay, you've got to do that, and I think that's going to make you a much better team. So just make sure that whatever it is that you decide to do, if you follow some of these principles and you make sure you're doing your homework and visiting with people and putting yourself in worst case scenarios and making sure that your personnel fits what you want to do and all those kind of things, you can be successful in whatever you want to do within reason. Now, obviously, you can't come out in some just made up defense that isn't sound. You have to be sound with numbers and leverage and coverages and all that. You got to do all that, but you also need to think outside the box a little bit. You know, don't think that just because, hey, a 3-2 is drawn up like this and this is what you have to do if you want to be a 3-2 team. Be willing to think outside the box and to do some different things and to make sure that you're presenting the offense with a lot of problems, maybe some problems that they didn't anticipate. And if you do that, you can be successful. So I appreciate the time. Appreciate you listening. And if I can help you in any way, if there's any questions you have for me at any point that you would like to ask, I love talking football and strength and conditioning anytime, anywhere. Again, my name is Donnie Kiefer, and my email, I'm going to give you my personal email, which is easy to remember, NC, as in North Carolina, Coach K at gmail.com. NCCoachK at gmail.com. Feel free to contact me at any time. Thanks for listening.